You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of GHS-TV's award-winning talk show, Crosstalk. I'm your host, Jamaia Chase. Each week in this time slot, we take a look at different issues, personalities, and events that affect you and our community. Whether on your stereo, on your phone, or in your car, the sounds of the radio can be heard all over the world. Radio is one of the most accessible forms of entertainment. And with more than 1 million different stations, there is something for everyone to enjoy. Today, we're taking a closer look at some local radio stations that are growing in popularity every day. My first guests are from the Visible Music College, which is developing their own radio education program, Visible Radio. Here with me now is Isaac Harper, production assistant, and Rick Tarrant, programming director at Visible Radio. Mr. Tarrant and Mr. Harper, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Visible Radio, the digital station, started back in 2005, but the FM station first hit the airwaves in 2017. Mr. Tarrant, what need did you see for an FM station?
The need for another FM station. I guess what we saw a need for was something that reflected the music of Memphis. And, you know, most stations now are corporate owned and everything reflects a national chart or a national trend. And there was nothing playing the roots of Memphis music, whether that's Elvis and Otis or B.B. King, or the current crop of artists, whether that's Star and Micey or Susan Marshall or Eric Hughes' band that play every week down on Beale Street, or Free World that plays all the time on Beale Street. So what we put together was a kind of a 50-50 mashup of legacy music and contemporary Memphis music, but that's the connection. It all has a Memphis connection. And there wasn't that, and now there is. So,
Mr. Harper, what were some of the challenges you faced when trying to get the FM station up and running?
Well, I wasn't too involved in the beginning. That was mostly Rick and Ken Storch, the president of the college, but certainly there's a lot of equipment you have to put together and licensing you have to put together, and we ran into some very challenging times there, just getting even an antenna in a good spot where you could pick it up anywhere. And you know, we're a low power FM station, so it doesn't have to go too far, but you still want to make sure people can hear it for a little ways.
Well, for those who want to tune in to WVZM, what is the range of the signal?
it's a low power FM, which means the FCC has allowed you to broadcast at 100 watts. I call it the 100 watt flamethrower, and you can have an antenna that's 100 feet high. And I believe the range is about 3.5 miles. So I like to say we cover the heart of Memphis very well. If you get outside of the loop, you'll have to tune in WVZM.org and stream it on your smart device or your computer, as you're well aware of. And then you can hear us anywhere in the world.
Well, Mr. Harper, I believe that some of your music comes from a very special group of students. Can you tell us about those students?
Sure. So Visible Music College, we focus on music, modern music, music production, music business. A lot of our students are going to college to be songwriters, to be worship leaders in their church. So they, through the course of their education, they put out music, and the college has their own record label as well. So they end up putting out worship albums, or as part of their education, students have to join a band, and then they also do their own music. So we like to feature that on the radio as well.
Yeah, our slogan is we honoring the past, the present, and the future of Memphis music. So that would include, the current crop, the historical crop, and the brand new artists that are emerging. So.
Well, at Visible Radio, you have a volunteer staff. Who are those staff members?
Right, we haven't really pulled the trigger on inviting people to volunteer, so we've had people that have sought us out, but we're going to really start promoting that, I think, in January, to say if you have a passion for Memphis music, some genre of Memphis music, we don't care if it's country or rock or blues or gospel. If you have a passion for Memphis music, we'd like you to be a part of it. But right now we have a fellow named Billy, and his show is called Billy's Blues. And so every weekend he plays 2 hours of Memphis and Delta blues. And we have a fellow who's doing the Johnny Cash show every week because he has a passion for all things Johnny Cash. And we have Sheila Whalem, who does a show called Love Talk, where she plays Memphis love songs and gives some tips on romance. So, like guys, you ought to wear your wedding ring, when you're out in public, things like that. But we will be looking for more. So if somebody has an idea for a Memphis metal show, I'm all ears.
Mr. Tarrant, can you talk about the hands-on experience that students gain from being a part of this radio station?
Well, a lot of radio is automated nowadays, so they learn about not only just how to press the microphone button and start talking, but the software that runs the radio station. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes things as far as importing the music and getting things ready and how to program a clock to, well, I won't get too deep into the weeds here, but yeah, just the behind-the-scenes software mostly. A lot of it's mundane, like data entry, composers of songs and things like that. But then there's opportunities for, voice acting and production, and since it's volunteer, it's like whatever somebody wants to do. Somebody asked me, so what do you need? I'm like, everything. Social media, website, DJs, the whole thing.
Well, Visible Radio is an award-winning station. What is your key to success?
Key to success? Well, I think our award was for production, and that's primarily my background. I started in radio when I was a little bit younger than you, about 15. I was a sophomore in high school, and got bit by the radio bug. And then somewhere along the way, well, actually, I tell people I'm the Rick that got fired when Rick Dees got hired. And when Rick Dees got hired at WHBQ, a door opened for me to learn how to do audio production, which back in the day was kind of a mystery art. Now everybody has a laptop and GarageBand, you can be a producer, but then that wasn't the case. So learning production opened up doors for me, and that's really what we got an award for, was doing Memphis music history vignettes and putting those together. So as far as a key to success, I don't know, I think it's paying attention to details and loving what you do.
Mr. Tarrant
Yes, ma'am.
and Mr. Harper, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It was great having both of you.
Our privilege, thank you.
We have to take a short break. When we come back, we'll look at an all-volunteer radio station that is becoming the face of radio in the Memphis community. Stay tuned.
And it's very fun to be in band, trust me. It's so much fun.
When I was an 8th grader and I saw them march, and I was like, wow, I need to be a part of this.
Our main performing group is the varsity band. That encompasses our marching band and our varsity concert band. We also have the jazz ensemble.
It's unique, so we're really lucky to have that.
I'm very methodical about teaching. I try to stay up to date because I want my students to have the best information that I can pass along to them.
He's excellent. He commands a sort of drive that we didn't exactly have.
I lead the class, but I also believe in the students self-assessing their work.
The leadership is led by the students. We lead most of the practices. It's basically just student-led.
And I think that's important for them to take that kind of ownership.
If you want to be a musician, you gain extremely important music skills, music techniques.
1, 2, 3.
There's so many opportunities for fellowship, and band is a family. And you develop that small community where you support each other, not only musically, but in many ways.
Really, without the band, the football games would be lame. Without the band, you wouldn't really have the pep rallies. The band is like a good foundation for the school spirit. If you want to join band, just do it.
I think band was the best part of my high school career.
For more information about the Kappa program, visit ghskappa.com or call 755-7775. You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. After students get the proper experience, they can jumpstart their career by working at the professional level. There are radio stations all over town where people around the world can listen to the sounds of Memphis. Joining me now from two of Memphis's most popular stations are Darel Snodgrass, classical music host at WKNO Memphis, and George Bryant from KWAM Radio. Mr. Snodgrass and Mr. Bryant, thank you both for being on the show with us today.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Both of your stations have been around for decades, and they have really built up a trusted following. How did your stations develop in the beginning, Mr. Snodgrass?
Well, we're what they call a dual licensee, and many of your viewers will no doubt know Channel 10, where many of you grew up with Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street. That station came first, and then we came along in 1972 when National Public Radio was formed. And basically, there was public radio before this, but there wasn't an overall organization or news organization. So that's what we were essentially created to do, was to bring National Public Radio programming and classical music programming to this area, because it didn't have either one. And that's what we've been doing for 47 years.
Mr. Bryant, KWAM has a very storied history as well. Can you tell us about it?
It is very historic. I think, developed from back in the 50s. And originally, and it's licensed to West Memphis. You can see the towers by looking over right across the river at the old Harahan Bridge. You can see our towers right there, and they've always been there. And originally, the radio station was licensed as KWEM, and it is a very historic station because they used to have a program where for $25 or whatever, you could come on and play your own music. And Howlin' Wolf, B.B. King, even Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, and a lot of people came there, but also it became famous for the fact that people, the Beale Street managers of the bars and clubs would listen to the radio station to pick up new artists and then invite them to come play on Beale Street. And the Phillips used to listen to the station for Sun Records. They picked up a lot of their talent off of that. So it was a very historic radio station, and at that time, research has gone back. It was the first white and black music played on the same radio station. So it's very historic for that.
Mr. Snodgrass, in your opinion, how have you seen radio grow over the past few years?
Well, radio has grown considerably over its entire history. In the past few years, things are changing a lot for radio because people are listening to it differently. So it is still growing, but it's sort of diversifying in many ways. I know you're going to have a podcast producer on here in just a few minutes. He can tell you about some of that. But it's a challenge for radio stations because people listen differently these days. People like to listen to what they want to, when they want to hear it. So radio stations are diversifying. They're doing streaming, they're doing podcasting, they're doing all of these things. It's still strong, it's still very strong, but it's changing and it is challenging.
Mr. Bryant, KWAM is known for playing some of the best Memphis music. How do you decide what kind of music to play?
Well, I want to talk about that, is that we're not really a music station. We don't play music unless it's bumper music going in, because we're an all-talk station. We have positioned ourselves as being the voice, the local voice, and we have the most locally produced shows in Memphis, but they are talk shows. People come on about their passion and they talk, and we turn those into podcasts a lot. So, we do Facebook live stream, but it's really a local platform to talk about your passions. We go from political to, raising pets and, and saving money. So.
Mr. Snodgrass, you serve as the classical music host at WKNO. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about some of the work you do on a daily basis?
Oh, sure. as you said, I'm a classical music host. I'm on the air from 9 till noon, but I'm also the director of radio, so I do a bunch of other stuff too. But yeah, I do a classical shift from 9 to noon, and we think that's very important. We're the only source of classical music on the radio here in the Mid-South, and we think that to be a really cultured city, you have to have classical music on the air. So I picked that out. I want to mention that we also do a daily arts interview show twice a day, every day. And we have people from the symphony, from the opera, from the ballet, from all the theaters in town. And we think that's really an important part of what we do because nobody else really covers the arts like we do. And it's, you know, it's 10 interviews every week. And we're booked up months in advance because people want to hear about that stuff, and we're the only place you can get it. So that's a very important part of what we do also.
Well, I saw on the daily schedule that you play at late times at night and early in the morning. Are you on live at every time of the day?
No, we're basically live from 6 a.m. until about 11 p.m. And then we have an automation service like so many stations do that runs classical music overnight.
Well, Mr. Bryant, can you tell us about some of the local shows you have at KWAM?
Yes, we have every day at 8 o'clock in the morning, we have local leaders who have a show from real estate to investment and retirement shows and things like that. And then we have Mary Beth Conley, who is from Channel 3. She comes over and does a show about hope and living life, for your dreams. And then in the afternoons, we have a show with Earl Farrell, who has been well known in the community. And that show, we run a lot of people who are doing good things in our community, nonprofits, and then also stories about how to go fishing and get ready to go fishing, camping. We're doing segments right now on Dive Shop on how to go scuba diving. So it's always a variety, from making wine, cooking your own food, restaurants, new restaurants that have opened up and things, just really good local community events.
Well, this is a question for both of you, but Mr. Snodgrass, we'll start with you. Where do you see radio in the next 50 years?
Well, that's a really good question. As I mentioned earlier, it is changing. There will always be a place for radio, I believe, because in many cases, it's the best place to get live breaking news. So that's always going to be there. But there's a lot going on, and it's hard to say really because things have changed so much just in the last few years. But I think there will always be radio. I think there will always be people listening to the radio in their cars as they drive to work and as they drive home. So that's always going to be there, I believe.
Well, Mr. Snodgrass and Mr. Bryant, it was a pleasure having both of you on the show with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have to take a break. Up next, we'll be joined by some faces of Memphis' most popular podcast. Stay tuned.
We have 4 major vocal ensembles at Germantown High School. There's a large chorale with about 50 to 60 students, a women's chorus, our chamber choir, which is an elite ensemble of 18 singers, and a contemporary a cappella group, which is about 16 singers.
It's really nice to be in a room full of people who share your passion and who want to learn and make every song as beautiful as it possibly can be.
I really try to instill in my students the importance of connecting with the literature, that they have to go outside of the box and actually understand what they're singing about.
Thank you.
This program has really pushed me. It's shown me a lot of my insecurities and how to grow past those.
Many times we'll gather around the piano to build that sense of camaraderie, to be able to hear each other better, to interact with each other and make music together. Work together, hold that solid, go.
Then we genuinely love music. We sing because we want to and not because our Mr. Hayner is telling us.
2 beats, you come in, 1 and 2. Music empowers us to come together as a group. I feel like this generation has become so focused on me, 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 me. And music is us, 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 us.
For more information about the Kappa program, visit GHS-Kappa.com or call 755-7775. You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. I'm Jamaia Chase. Podcasts have become a very popular form of radio over the past decade. From the palm of your hand, you can tune into almost 1 million different stations. Joining me now from one of the city's most popular sources of podcasts is Gil Worth from the OAM Network. Mr. Worth, thank you for being on the show with us today.
Thank you for having me.
The OAM Network, can you tell us how this podcast service started?
Absolutely. So I started my own podcast around 2012. I'd played music for a long time, and I kind of acquired a bunch of recording equipment. And at a certain point, I was playing in like 5 bands, and my fiance, then now wife, said, "You got to stop doing this." I mean, I was like playing out every night. So I quit a few of the bands, and then a few of them kind of, dissipated in their own way. And then I was kind of sitting there, and I wasn't doing anything. And I'd started listening to podcasts, and I was like, I think I have all the equipment to do this myself. So I started my own podcast, and I really enjoyed the whole package. You would do the logo and the branding. I recorded all the music for it myself, and then, I recorded the podcast. And I kind of, as I was putting it together, learning how to, set up all the RSS feeds, which is, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, all the different platforms, I kind of figured that, this may be a good service to offer someone. You come in with this idea for a show, I help you shape that show and distribute it in all these places. So I kind of started there, and people would come to me and say, I had this idea of doing a show about ghost hunting, and I was like, okay, let's make that a podcast. So I really enjoyed the idea of making these shows that were really based on people's passions and like developing the idea off of there.
Well, you have about 20 podcasts, I believe, and they all touch on a wide range of different topics and views. Can you talk about some of those?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the shows we do are, a lot of people come in and they want to talk about pop culture, sports, and stuff like that. But like I said, we also do one about paranormal and ghost hunting in the Mid-South in Memphis. We do shows about religion. We do shows about... we do one called Basic, which are these 2 moms that live in Midtown, and they just talk about raising their children and being Gen X moms in today's society. So yeah, we definitely have a lot of shows with a lot of different topics. So I think that if you come to our network, and you'll be able to find something that you would like on it.
And how often do you release these podcasts?
Most shows we do are weekly. A lot of shows record in advance, and we release them, every Monday or every Wednesday. Some shows do, bi-weekly and stuff like that. But most shows we do are weekly shows, so we release weekly.
Well, can you tell us about your pitch that you have that you use to discover the different topics and views?
Absolutely. So if you go to our website, theoamnetwork.com, you can go to theoamnetwork.com/startapodcast. And there's a form there where you can put your name, your email, and then a description of what you want your podcast to be. And it could be anything, really. And I think that's where we try to succeed, is that you come with any idea for a show. We figure out how to format that into a podcast, put the music around it, make the logos, get it all set up, and then you can host your own podcast.
Well, after you give the okay to a pitch, what goes on from there? Do they just start recording?
Well, there's usually a few meetings to set up all the media that we need to get, the logo. We design all the logos in-house. Set up music that we can use as bumpers on the ends or in between breaks and stuff like that. And then kind of set up bullet points for what you're going to talk about. And then, you just come in and record. We put it together, and we put it up on all the sites.
Mr. Worth, once a podcast gets up and running, how do you gauge how many people are listening?
We gauge through the RSS feeds that we use. So we use iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and Google Play. Those kind of connect to a lot of other ones, but we have sources on each of those They give us analytics on how many people are listening to it, how many devices it's on. And then also we can see how many people are visiting it on our website.
Does the number of people who are listening affect the people who get cut or the programs that get cut?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that we're definitely focused on helping someone gain sponsorships or advertising, so they can they can make money off of their own show, the thing that they're passionate about. But our goal is to vet shows and produce them and promote them until they have enough listeners to sell sponsorships on it.
Well, like everything else, OAM needs money to rely on. Do you have any fundraisers, or do you stick to the traditional advertising?
Yeah, we do some fundraisers. So if you go to the OAMnetwork.com/donate, you can donate to help us kind of keep the lights on. And then every 2 months, we do a variety hour, which is live on Facebook, where a few of our shows come in and do 15-minute segments of their show back to back, so you can kind of see what our network has to offer. And then as we're doing that, we run a pledge to donate to the network.
Well, this show and the first 2 segments talked about the traditional idea of radio. How do you think podcasts have impacted the talk radio?
I'm sure it has impacted it pretty greatly. I do think that radio will always be around. You always will have a radio in your car, so and people are always going to listen to it. But I definitely think that it has changed. It's helped it a little bit too, because a lot of these talk radio shows can be turned into podcasts and be available on demand. And I think that that's the biggest takeaway, and that's any media now with Netflix and Disney Plus. Everything is on demand because people want to listen to what they want to listen to, or watch what they want to watch when they want to watch it. So I think that it's helped shape a new platform for radio stations to use.
Well, Mr. Worth, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Radio is one of the most versatile forms of media that is always within reach. I can't wait to tune into all these stations we've highlighted on the show today. For more information on our programming, please check us out on the web at GHS-TV.org, where we are streaming live 24 hours a day. You can also check us out on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Jamaia Chase. From all of us at GHS-TV, thank you for watching Crosstalk, and I hope to see you again.